topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good morning, listeners. This is Divya, and of course, it's Tuesday morning, and I'm excited because you are with me, and I'm here talking to you. So, thank you for all of you who have got our books, because partial profits from the books go to kiva.org, and as such, we are able to help entrepreneurs from all across the globe. So thank you for that. And for those of you who have not got our books, take a moment and get our books, because not only it's going to help you help yourself live the life you desire, it will also help us help the entrepreneurs all across the globe. So thank you for supporting us and being our staunch followers and listeners. So appreciate you. And I'm going to highly encourage you and invite you to spend that 1 hour of your time every month helping someone with no strings attached. Whether if you break it down into multiple 5-minute segments of kindness. So let's get that kindness circle going. And let's bring in our guest. Welcome, Victoria.
Thank you so much for inviting me to your show. I've been a long time listener of your show and a subscriber. So being invited to come on your show is such an honor, and I'm so looking forward to today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate it.
And I really don't listen to a lot of, because, as you know, my time is crazy and I don't listen to a lot of shows, but I do listen to yours because you just have some amazing way of getting information that's really serious topics in a way that's very comforting and, laid back style. It's not like, just too hard to listen to. So it's great. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Victoria. I really appreciate your kindness. So, Victoria, usually we start out at the childhood. And I know that you have a really warm story and inspiring story about your family. So can you share with us?
Yeah, it's a tough one. So I was born in South Korea, and we had a decent, like a upper middle class lifestyle. It wasn't like really fancy or anything, but we lived right coastal city near Busan, which is the second largest city. And at the time, it was a sleepy little village. I didn't know anything, and I was just curious because we were on a very tiny little island. So I read a lot just to see what the world outside of this little tiny village was. But one day, my parents came and decided that they're going to move their family to America. Was considered to be like a dreamland for a family that had 4 girls. At that time in South Korea, girls were not encouraged to go to college. And if they went, some very elite families would send their girls to college. They were allowed to major in things like home economics. They weren't really encouraged to be anything other than, I guess husband shopping, let's put it that way. So my father had bigger dreams. He had 4 girls and, decided to come to America. And once we got here, we found out that all the money that he saved and sent over was frozen. So he didn't have
Mhm.
access to that money for 25 years. So the first day he realized he had $30 in his pocket. So we lived in East Los Angeles, and I know you're in the East Coast somewhere. Tough neighborhood. Kids went to school
Mm.
with switchblades. There were gunfights, police cars almost every day at my school. So, I was 13 years old, and I had to help my parents raise my younger siblings. I was the oldest of the five. So, it was a tough life. But from that start, I got to a point where I didn't believe in the American dream anymore.
Mm.
I wanted to just go back home. But we didn't have the money to go back, and I had nothing left except my ability to hope for something better. Because I kept thinking, life just cannot be any worse than this, really.
Mm.
So it was a real inspiration for me and motivation for me to start working towards my own future. And that future for me was just be able to afford my own apartment.
Mhm.
There was 7 of us. My parents had 4 girls and a little boy that was just born. I mean, he was like a month old. So, I studied hard, did all the right things, made a ton of mistakes, but I eventually, built an amazing business that, because I felt like, Divya, I was never gonna make a whole lot of money. I was never gonna be rich, so
Hmm.
at least,
So
yeah, I
let's
just
let's
enjoy.
explore that.
Yeah,
You mentioned that I did not believe in American dream.
right.
So when did that shift happen? Because I know you've been very successful. So
Mhm.
as you were growing up, you mentioned that, my first thing was to get my own apartment. So tell us about that journey.
Yeah, so I wanted to get I thought if I could just get my own apartment, buy myself a used car, that would be my American dream. Because until then, I had to share. I mean, we had one room, a Murphy bed for a family of 7. So that was kind of. But then I did go, to UCLA, undergraduate there. Went to MBA at USC. I had to get scholarships because our parents couldn't afford anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I worked 30 hours while I was at UCLA the whole 4 years, and then I worked 50 hours a week while I was going through my MBA program.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got out and I climbed the corporate ladder for a couple of years, and I
Mm-hmm.
realized that
Right.
all I was doing was just working my rear end off in exchange for
Mm-hmm.
some money, and I was absolutely miserable. I didn't enjoy my work, and
Right.
I didn't see even though I grew up in that culture of, like, you would think that I would hate motherhood and all that because, like, that's what I was, like, born into. But once I got married, I really wanted to have children, and I wanted to raise them in a way that I wanted to be raised, which is
I see.
parents
So
being home.
no, that is very important to have that,
Right.
because a lot of times people may have suffered through or gone through some tough situations and then they want to avoid it. So what I'm hearing is that you wanted that. So there are a lot of how should I say, there are a lot of inner city schools. There are a lot of
Right.
kids over there. And when they go through this type of trauma, it leaves a mark. And we
Yeah.
have to acknowledge that. But
Right.
that said, you did turn around and you said, like, for you, American dream was to get an apartment and a car.
Right. Right.
And that was enough. So you were grateful for that.
I
So there are
was.
a lot of people in that situation. What would you tell them? How can they get out? How can they create their lives? I mean, yes, all the odds are stacked against them.
I'm gonna be a contrarian. And I'm sure you come from a very similar background that I do, that belief system in a lot of Asian or immigrant families is that you go get all these degrees, you go become a doctor or a lawyer, you get a job, climb the corporate ladder, you have job security. My parents kind of really put that in my head, and so I did all that. And the problem was I was an artist. I loved art, and I that's what I excelled in when I was back home. And then when I couldn't speak any English, I mean, I spoke not a single word. I mean, all I knew was hello. And I didn't, people talk back to me. I didn't know what to say. So in the first 2 years, I had to actually draw to communicate. I want to go to the bathroom, or, I'm hungry, or, stuff like that. So I became better at expressing myself with my drawings. So I would just say to anybody who, and I trust me, if you're listening to me right now, I have lived the inner city life. I mean, we had to like cut up an orange into 8 sections, and my dad would give the 2 sections to the youngest child, and that's how poor we were. But you just have to know that you weren't born on this earth to starve and suffer forever. You just have to, figure out what you can do for yourself just that one moment, what you can do for yourself for that day. So for me, I realized even at that young age, my parents were both, already going to work at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I thought I need to do right away was to learn to speak English. And going to school, waiting for English to improve wasn't going to work out all that well for me because it wasn't working for the first month. So my dad actually got an English to English dictionary, and he would just randomly circle, because he didn't speak English either. So he would randomly circle these words, and I memorized about 250 words. And so I'd have to look up, while they were at work, put my younger kids to bed. I would look up, it would say something like confidence, for example, and then I'd have to look up the definition of it. And when I look up the dictionary, you don't speak English, so there's like 6 other words you don't understand what that is, right, in the definition itself.
Right.
So I did that every day, and what I realized was that American children at age 12, for example, 13, they kind of survive on 2,500 words vocabulary. That's it. So I learned that pretty quickly. In fact, because these words were chosen randomly, my vocabulary was actually much more superior to most kids that went to school at that age. So it's just an example of, things that you could do for yourself. Don't rely on anybody else, and for people who are living in inner city right now, the English may not be the thing. It may be something else. It may be learning to count. It may be, learning a skill, or just controlling your emotions. I mean, I suffered from depression,
Right.
suffered from low self-esteem. I suffered from all that, but I still looked even to today, I look for the one thing that I could do to help myself, because once you do that, then you're in a position to help a lot of other people.
And now the information is more readily available.
Yeah, for sure.
So this is great, that what you're talking about. Look for one thing.
One
What is
thing.
it that
Yeah.
you could do for yourself, like rather than depending on anyone, whether it's going on YouTube, searching Google,
Right.
because I
For
remember
sure.
we had to go to the library.
Oh, yeah. I remember. So,
And of
Divya,
course,
let's not date ourselves. You remember those microfiche things you have to, go to figure out which section to go to the library. That was,
yeah.
I agree with you.
And then even through I still remember like having those Britannica encyclopedias
Yeah.
and going through that, okay, and then putting the pieces together.
Right.
And of course, that builds critical thinking and other skill sets.
Right.
And similarly, every generation brings their own new skill sets, which we may not be able to do it. But the basic fundamentals remain the same. So really
Right.
like that
Yeah.
transition. Yes, no matter how tough the odds are, how tough the situation is, whatever difficulty you're facing,
Right.
find that one thing and
Right.
do it for yourself today. And I'm sure that, as you continued working through a dictionary and growing your vocabulary, it was the consistent practice that brought you progress.
Well, not only that, once you do that, once you actually start to, whether it's first 100 words even, it gives that child a confidence that
Mhm.
I was able to, there's this dictionary that I can rely on, that it gives you that your confidence grows as you accomplish the smallest little things. So, and the other thing I would say is, nobody's perfect. When you're in the inner cities, or when you're you could be in a nice suburb where you just have low self-confidence because everybody else is driving nicer cars, or, whatever. You just have to understand that, nobody's perfect. Everyone's fighting their own battle somewhere. And that, if you just got to be the best you can be at that point in time, because like you said, consistency matters. And, I have built a business that's just amazing. And I look back at my journey of, now it's like $750 million worth of business that I've done on my own brand.
Mhm.
That I never actually dreamt that. I never wanted it. It was just like once you build that business, it's kind of like a snowball effect.
Mhm.
The business, I got to the point where the business growing by itself almost,
No,
So
that's great. So
yeah.
let's talk some more about it. So you mentioned about that you were right here, you wanted to have kids, and the corporate job was not working out for you at that time. So looks like, folks, we may have lost our guest. Hopefully, our guest will join us back. In the meantime, let's talk about what we were. Let's just pick up. Let's say all the odds are stacked against you. How do you know what is that one thing that can help you? Find your passion. What is it that you like to do? And then, based on that, you can pick a skill. Or if you are feeling that there is something that is of necessity, because as they say, necessity is the mother of invention. If there is something you need to do, and that will help you grow in your career, whether it doesn't matter whether you're working at Starbucks or, so let's just take an example. Recently, what happened was that here's one of the persons that I'm mentoring. And as a result, what happened was, like, the person came to me, they were in Starbucks and they were thinking, like, okay, what is this job good for? Like, I'm just behind the counter, I'm serving. And you know what happened? What happened was that they had not opened up their doors of mind. So once you open up the doors for mind, she climbed the ladder. And not only that, but she got the scholarship from Starbucks to get a degree. So you can find your ways to get that degree. And once you have that degree, or whichever way you are going, you can make that life for yourself. And now she's in a very good place. All right, Victoria, do we have you back?
Yeah. So what I was going to say to you is that earlier where we left off was nobody's
Mm-hmm.
perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I guarantee you, whether you believe in whatever your American dreams, dream is, you're going to continue to make mistakes. I make mistakes every day today after I've done all that business, both in business and in my personal life, because you're not perfect. Every day you can look back and go, you know what, I could have done this better, that better. Or if I only had done this, I could have been a, 100 billionaire like Oprah Winfrey. But you just have to embrace all that life has to offer, because all that good stuff happens after you make those mistakes. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you show me a skier, downhill skier, like Olympic skier that has never fallen, I would say you're a liar because it's probably not possible, right? And I don't
Definitely
use
not
that word
possible.
very, yeah, it's not possible.
Yeah.
If you look at any like a weightlifter who's never dropped a dumbbell, that's not possible either. So
Mm-hmm.
in business, I mean, talk to authors. I mean, most authors that write books, I mean, even Stephen King, who's supposedly like the godfather of all writing, some of his books actually suck. I'm going to tell you right now. I've read
Well,
all his books.
it
I
does
can tell you.
happen.
So,
It does happen.
right. Mhm.
So you definitely make a great point, is that without mistakes, life
There
doesn't
could be no
happen.
success. Yeah, there could
Yeah,
be no success.
there
So
could
when
be
you
no.
make your mistakes, like if you're in the inner city, you make all the mistakes, you become friends with all the wrong people, whoever, get it out of your system. But the most important thing is you have to learn from that. You have to learn from your mistakes.
Mhm.
Because you and I both know people who make mistakes, who just blame other people, just move right on. That's not good. That doesn't help you march forward towards your goal.
Right. So coming back to, you talked about that, you wanted to be in a place where you could have family, have motherhood. So
Yeah.
tell us about that transition from corporate to business.
So I was actually climbing the corporate world pretty well because at that time, back in the early 80s, there were very few people who had MBAs that were female. So we were the first generation of people that had job titles like marketing director. We weren't vice presidents yet, but we weren't receptionists anymore, female as
Right.
female workers. So I was working about 14 hours a day and I was commuting an hour and a half each way to work. And I thought
Mhm.
to myself, um, my parents left me as a basically I was just abandoned. I mean, they didn't want to, but they had to go to work every day from 6 a.m. to almost midnight every day. They each worked two
Mhm.
jobs. And I was doing the same thing. And I thought to myself, when the only difference is I had choices. So my parents didn't have a choice, but I had choices and I was making the same mistakes that they were making. So I thought to myself, I'm just gonna have to cut that out right away. And I didn't see any reason why I could have a simpler life, like just feed my children, make sure that they have enough of an education so they can, chart their own waters. And I thought I could work half the time and make half the money. I could still make that work. So, and I also thought, I wasn't making a huge salary. I was making a decent salary, but it just went to pay for rent and everything else. And I thought, you know what? As long as I'm doing this, I might as well at least enjoy my life because I was miserable doing all the financial stuff and just going to meeting after meeting. So I quit my work, I quit my job. And here is the most important thing that I want everyone to understand is when I quit my job, I thought to myself, okay, how am I going to make this work? How am I going to start my own business, have my two children, and, what's my plan? And I thought, you know what? If I could just make $2,000 a month, that would be enough because I was still living in an apartment. And that would be enough because my car is paid off.
Mhm.
And I bought like a several years old Pinto that used to blow up like hatchbacks. It's just pretty bad. So, my expenses were low, and I thought I just needed to make 2 grand a month, and that would be enough for me to, accomplish my goal. And so, what would it cost? What would it take me to make the 2 grand a month? And so I figured out that if I just had, just a few customers, I don't need a huge number of customers. So if I just had a few customers, and then, I looked at in those days they had like the norm, which is when you do direct mail, because this is before the internet age. When you do direct mail, you get like a 5% open rate, and then of those people who open your mail, you get about an 80% reject rate. Okay, and then you get about 10% of those people. World was kinder back those days, so you get about 10% of the people that'll kindly tell you we don't want this for whatever reason. And then you get about 10% of the people say, send me more information. So I thought, okay, if I sent out 50 highly qualified letters a day, okay, and I got, so many people coming. So I did the math and I thought, so I was very disciplined about sending, you have to type it on the IBM Selectric. And so I typed them, and I was very, very careful about not making it look like it's a mass mailing type thing. So I would say something like, dear Miss Divya, I checked out your collection at Neiman Marcus, and I loved it, and I love this, and I think I can help you grow your business, kind of thing. So believe it or not, I didn't get a whole lot of success, but what I did do was when my kids were younger, I had to drop them off at 7:30, 7:45. I had to leave at 7:45, drop the kids off by 8. So I got up at 5 a.m. and 5 a.m. to 7:30 or so, 7 o'clock or so. It's like a midday in London. So, those are the only people I could actually contact. So, and in the old days also, it's like, I would send it by a fax, and whenever you send a fax, it would actually come to somebody's desk, instead of like a random email. It's like faxes back those days were kind of like FedEx packages, right? So I'm dating myself. So luckily, the Harrods London, they're so polite. The British people over there are so polite. She would call me and say, thank you so much for sending me this, 30-page fax or whatever. But I'm not interested, or whatever. And then as soon as I get that, fax back or a phone call back, I would call her. That's when I would call. And I would thank her profusely for rejecting me and actually sending me a rejection letter because nobody even did that. And I would ask, like, what would it have taken for me to, pique your interest? Can you give me, I'm brand new. I'm in this business, like, for no reason whatsoever, but I just need some information from you. And so I can improve myself. And so when they give you critiquing of, this look, I can't, at that point, they're just kind of more polite. They're like, oh, I kind of like this floral, but it looks too big. It might be too expensive. So I would work on that. By the time I communicated with this person the fourth time, they've kind of designed the whole thing for me. So I would at least get a shot at it. So the point here is, just be persistent, set your goals, break it down like I did. I broke it down to how many, direct mail emails, packages I had to send. The other thing too is the only reason I sent it by a fax is because when I would get on the phone, in those days, it was like $4 a minute international calls. If you sent it by a fax, it goes in 6 seconds per page. So I could, you'd be heard, you'd be seen, right? You don't have to explain anything. And I would only waste the $4 a minute once they actually got a response, right? And I always responded to, just being kind to people. Like when they reject you, instead of saying, oh, she doesn't know what she's doing. She's, she thinks she's hot or whatever. I would actually thank her, for, I would just say, thank you so much for sending me, this kind rejection letter. And so that was sort of, so I had a global business before, I was in Galleries Lafayette, all those places before. And then Neiman Marcus called me one day and said, who are you? And I'm like, well, check me out. So I went over there to Dallas. And so I was there as well. I mean, it was just, incredible journey.
Oh, that's beautiful. So you mentioned that, your business definitely blew up. So tell us about that as well.
Yeah. So in the beginning, like I said, I went all of the above. Back in 1989 is when I started my business. Was a financial meltdown back then. It was the economic. 87 was the Black Monday, and then 89 was horrible. So I thought at that time, like, who's still spending money these days? And so I went through. There was a travel agency downstairs, and they had these giant books of hotels and the gift shops, the airlines. So I remember I was sending 50 letters a day, every day. So I did some duty free, leisure, some department stores, like Harrods, Galleries Lafayette. And it turns out I actually did open. I was the number one duty free, on all the airplane in flights. I was on 30 different airlines, duty free gift shops, as well as all the major department stores. And then one day I got a call from HSN. And the whole TV shopping was just beginning at that point. I didn't even know who they were. I don't have time to watch TV, so I never even watched them. So they called me, and when I first turned it on, I said, no, I don't want to be on TV. First of all, I don't want anyone to know who I am. And secondly, there was 99% chance I'd fail because I'm just not a natural talker. And lastly, I'm just very uncomfortable doing this. And besides, like, you're like a grandma shopping network. I don't, that's not what I do. So, one thing you'll know, I'm very honest. And just like I tell people, look, I'm brand new. I have no idea what I'm doing. I just need some help. You'd be amazed when you let people know that you are not perfect and you are trying to learn, and you, my potential customer, have the power to help me. You cannot believe how many people just want to volunteer all this information for you. I've had people, like when I went to Saks and Neiman's on Wilshire and Rodeo Drive, I just went with the sketchbook because I couldn't even afford to make a sample. Like, gold and silver takes a lot of money. So I would just, I sketched them out. I went to them and I would say, is the assistant manager, because I would not ask for the manager, because managers are usually busy. I would ask the assistant manager if she can just take a look at it and give me her opinion. And I remember the Saks Fifth Avenue buyer was like, the assistant manager was like, oh my God, like, we have all the movie stars and they would love it. Can you leave the book here? And I said, well, can you sell it? She goes, yes. And I said, you haven't asked me the price of anything. And she said, it doesn't matter what the price is. They'll buy it. And so I actually had a bunch of things sold just off of sketches. So just, like I would say if you're right now listening and you are discouraged, or maybe you're not that discouraged yet, but you want to, sort of do your thing, have a balanced life, and still can dream, you can do all that. You just have to think outside the box. Don't listen to experts out there that really hasn't accomplished a whole lot tell you why they're experts, really. Because I guess one of the blessings I have is I never had time to listen to, like TV or experts or any of that. I just had time to kind of use my grit and persistence to get just a few steps ahead every day.
Oh, that's beautiful. So, what a journey. It's very inspiring, Victoria, what you have accomplished. So, if people are like thinking about it, what's your brand's name?
So my jewelry is titled Victoria Wieck Collection.
Mm,
And what I'm doing now is I've had a 25-year live TV journey along with all the other department stores. I've sold products in like 50 countries. What I spend my time doing now is mentoring other women, especially young entrepreneurs like my daughter's age, who are sort of lost because in this information age, there's all this conflicting information about following your passion, doing what you want to do, and then some people say don't follow your passion. That's a stupid thing to do. They're very contradictory information. I try to give them a realistic view of life is not easy. No matter what path you choose, it's not easy at all. But there is a way you can learn from every mistake. And, this is America. I do now believe in the American dream. As you can see, that my dream have, definitely exploded at some point. I think year 3, I was doing like $10 million, after I started my company. I do think that everything is possible at any age. I mean, in America, you can be a drug addict, you can be a high school dropout, you could have been in prison. I mean, even you can wake up at age 60 and still achieve everything you ever wanted in life, because that's what the opportunity today, gives you. I mean, look at people like, I find this interesting. If you look at the people or the brands that control our lives, Apple, Amazon, Google, most of these people, except for Jeff Bezos, everybody else, Facebook, for example, everybody else started their company with less than $5,000 in their garage, and they failed multiple times. When you're looking at Amazon, for example, do you remember, Divya, when Bezos was coming on CNBC every quarter talking about why he lost, $100 million that quarter?
mhm.
And I
Yeah.
remember everybody was celebrating when he finally broke even after 20 years. you know, so it's true. So, just believe in yourself, be realistic. I just say as a last thing I will tell you, and I just want to give you an analogy. Every year, Americans decide they want to lose weight. New Year's resolution number 1, all the retailers are selling fitness equipment, diet plans, and whatever. And every year, 75% of Americans say they want to lose weight, get healthier. And every year they get heavier. Okay. It's because their goals are very vague. Okay. So if you say, I want to lose weight, I want to get healthier, that's a good goal. But if you said, you know what, I've already done all that, so I just want to lose 10 pounds this year. Okay. Just this year. And then you break it down and say, if I had to lose 10 pounds and I lose 2 pounds a month, I'll be at 12 pounds, right? And if you say 2 pounds a month, and you think to yourself, that comes down to like cutting out 300 calories or cutting out 150 calories and moving 150 calories, like walking down the block. Now, if you did that and you say, well, if I have to lose 150 calories, what do I have to do? Cut out a piece of bread, cut out a glass of wine, or whatever you're doing for the whole day. And if you did it every day and you didn't meet your goal, you only lost, let's say 8 pounds in, whatever, 6 months or whatever, you're still better off, because if you do it again, you see what I'm saying? So you're better off than if you didn't do it. You're better off losing 6 pounds in 6 months than gaining 6 pounds in 6 months, because you didn't really have a concrete plan.
Mhm.
And so having being realistic, like starting your own business, that doesn't mean tomorrow morning you're going to be successful. You just have to kind of like break it down and figure out what you can absorb and just be consistent about it. Because if you, like in that example, if you lost 6 pounds a year, even because you didn't quite make it to 12 pounds, 3 years down the road, you're 18 pounds, lighter. That's a big deal,
Yeah, and
you know?
here's the thing. You're right on the mark about making those goals very specific and very clear. And you
Mhm.
talked about like, how you mentor people. So if you're really, really passionate about something, then you bring your passion into it and see, you also bring in some of that realism because going back to your story,
Yeah,
what you did was you used doodling or your artwork. You
right,
made it a part of your business. And as you said that, like, you would leave those
right, yeah,
art with people, and then people would say, yep, the stars will buy it and will purchase it. So they're not exclusive because a lot of people think like, oh, if I have passion, I cannot be realistic. If I'm realistic, I cannot have passion. So it's important as to whatever
yeah.
information you're getting from anywhere, make it your own, whatever works for you, because you are unique. Your experiences are unique.
Yeah, and the only other thing I would say too is whether you're working for a company or whether you are starting a business of your own, the only way ultimately that you become super successful is if you understand how you and your skills add value to someone else's life, to a lot of people's life,
Mhm.
right? So I wrote a book. Like I said, we do. I'm mentoring, and I didn't really want to write the book either because I don't want to give false hope to people. I don't need the money now. But during COVID, I was giving a lot of free webinars, free seminars, and people kept asking for it. And so the whole series of webinars actually became the book. And the book is called $1 Million Passion. And it's how you turn your passion into $1 million business. And it just gives you very realistic view of what it's like to be an entrepreneur and a mom. And I don't want to use this word karma, but I believe in karma. My parents used to always say, karma comes back with interest. Good karma comes back with interest. Bad ones too. So just be careful about what you do. So, I was very careful about making sure that in my book there are some really concrete examples that people can apply to their business right now, and it's designed for people who what and you know what? It's designed for people who don't have money, want to start their business with like $5,000. Okay, but even if you have the money, pretend that you don't have the money because you don't have to spend an absolute fortune. The fact that I didn't have money helped me really shape my business. For example, when I'm making drawings, for example, it just cost me Sketchpad, which was like, I don't know, $2 at the time, and a number two pencil. And if they say they didn't like this, I can resketch it. But today, a lot of entrepreneurs, go and look for manufacturers that's going to make you a prototype and all this stuff. And they're spending 10, 15, $20,000 on a sample that they don't know who's going to buy it.
Mhm.
Right. So why, when I was
Right.
on TV, one of the reasons why I built that Mega Monster business, which was a $50 million a year business, that's per year annually for 25 years. Um, we always tested. Even so, like for example, if we find out, for example, they'll flash up, some canary yellow diamonds, they'll flash up some pink diamonds, and they'll flash up whatever. At 8 o'clock in the morning, they get a nice little read and say, let's say the canary yellow sold and the pink diamond sold, but the emerald didn't sell. My producers are like, you know what? A lot of your pastel spring colors are selling, but the deeper colors aren't jewel tones aren't selling. So in the afternoon, we'd actually tweak it and make sure that those things that they're responding to. So by the time we got to prime time, we got it completely fixed up. Now, the reason why the emerald was there because they had reasons to believe from the last month's show,
Mhm.
that pastel should sell. But just in case things are turning around May, they put that emerald to see. So emerald was almost like a sacrificial lamb to see if it's actually going to work or not. So that was a test material. They'll
Yeah, no,
actually load the
definitely.
yeah. You
What
have
you're
to test
talking
the
about
stuff.
is the product market fit, seeing like
Yeah,
testing your idea, like, whether it's a course or anything, putting it out there, just seeing like, are people going to say yes to you for what value you're providing it to them and testing it out before spending thousands of dollars. So great point, Victoria. Where can people find you as we wrap up the show?
You can come to victoriawieck.com. You can find all my jewelry there, my 2 books. I actually wrote a science fiction after I left HSN in 2017. And also the $1 Million Passion. It's not going to be expensive, and it has got endorsements like crazy from people that, are pretty impressive, that are endorsing this book. So, and it's made for, like I said, for anybody who's already, now, if you're already in business and you're, trying to get to from $1 million to $10 million, that book is really ready for scaling, doing all those things. Just like we were talking about testing 10 years ago, you couldn't test it. You didn't really have an easy way to test and get instant results with very little money, because you had to buy this information from focus groups or whatever, from marketing companies. But today you can do that. It's just that you have to learn how to do it so that you're getting real reads, right? So this book has everything in it. And you can come. I do free webinars once a month I don't sell anything. I don't need to sell anything. I don't sell. You're just going to get free information from somebody who's been in business for 35 years here on my own. So victoriawieck.com, WIECK.com.
Well, thank you, Victoria, because it's important that we build entrepreneurs and we help people to step into entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is so powerful. Not only it builds your character, but it also helps you build other people and create more jobs. So thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, and we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Well, listeners, thank you so much for joining us, because you are the life and soul of this show. So let us know what expertise and what stories we can bring you so you can live the life you deserve. And we will see you on next Tuesday. And thank you, Juan, for making the show technically possible. Be well and take care.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.